Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to our Supervision series. We'll be covering this session. We'll be Chapter 16 or Series 16, Training and Orientation from a Supervisor's Perspective. You're taking me on an online class or a face-to-face class or one of my workshops, and this is a supplement to either a full-blown lecture or through the forums. So let's go on in this. You already had the book to reading, and utilizing some of the other interactive softwares that I use within some of my lectures. Okay, so training. What's training? Now, those of you who had the other series are not one in utilizing training. You train a dog. You train a cat. You train a kid when they're growing up. But training does have some aspect. If I have to look at when I was in the construction, we had to know how to perform CPR on an individual. And you don't have to think, what do I do? Just training. There you have to be something, the minute something happens, you look for the signs, you're automatic pilot, for lack of a better word. You respond quickly, and you go through some procedural looking at it. So you train, so you respond. So there's certain things, if you're doing a certain type of equipment, you have to respond a certain way, otherwise you'll have a wrong outcome or a negative outcome you're looking at for. But what I really like to do is more of education. So if there's a little training at the beginning, new employee, he or she doesn't know what to do, or like a kid, don't do this, or you reward them, in an indirect way through praise or anything for the intrinsic motivation, and people do like to be rewarded, pat on the back. So if I'm looking at educating my workforce from a supervisor's perspective, if I could not tell them this, if I could market it to them, I'm a double major, management and marketing, and convince them that this course of action, that once you learn it, you could take those skills and move up within the organization, or take these skills and improve your quality of life at work. It is quality of life at home, but it's also good quality of life at work, and it makes your job interesting, and then you have that intrinsic ability because you have some control over how you accomplish certain tasks. So increases one's skills, that will enable employees. So I'm just going to go like this. Instead of doing this, I go training / education. Let's do it live, okay? So this way, remember, at the beginning you train them a little bit so they know how to use the copy machine. There's only one way of doing it. And then you educate them later on if it gets a jam, how do you fix it by reading the instructions. That's the critical thinking skills. Okay, and then a better meet the organizational goals plus the individual's goals. Okay, so when you're looking at training, a lot of times before I send an employee to training, or a brand new employee, or one that's moving on, or a new task that the organization is coming to, like an AutoCAD or a CAD system when I was managing engineering. And even though I may not be an engineer, as a supervisor, you should at least attend some of the training sessions. This shows the importance to your team, because they're out there to make you happy. So this shows, hey, this training is important. I'll take some of my own time off, and it's twofold. It encourages your employees that, hey, he or she is involved and they understand the process. The second thing, your employees now, whether you understand the process or not, in their minds, they will look at you and say, you know what? I can't really tell them this new software is doing that, because George was already trained on it the same way I do it. A lot of times I go to software and say, man, look how easy it'll make your job do. You don't have to put on the specification. Man, he makes the lines straight for you. If you have AutoCAD and somebody sends you the architectural drawing, you could layer it down and see if there's going to be any conflict where you want to put the equipment on. This is excellent. And look how much time you save. You could do more jobs and do, you don't tell them more jobs like that, because people are going to be, oh my goodness. But that's basically why you bring technology, to improve the quality of work and to improve the production, and so you could have more time for the more complex types of jobs. Okay, so anyway, so we'll leave that. So giving new employees information they need to do their work, and comfortably, effortlessly, and efficiently, supervisors basically begin their jobs. Remember, so part of the orientation, not only in the training, is when I get a new employee, because I guess this is all ties in, new employee and training, I have to make them comfortable, and then you have to look, do I tell them about the job, I make them shadow with someone for a couple of weeks, get comfortable with the different types of tools or the procedure before I send them to training. training? And there's one way to do it. Or do I send them to training right away? I'd rather have them comfortable to understand the processes, as especially there's a lot of new information he or she has to learn. Your mind can only absorb so much. I mean, subconsciously it takes it all, right? But to bring it back to the conscious level where I could actually utilize it and pull it for critical thinking and how to do my job in a more effective and efficient way, I need to be exposed slowly so I could see where the pieces fit. And everyone's got like a learning cycle. Some are faster than others or comprehensive level, but overall you'll have an average. Maybe you should take a person within 30 days. So maybe the first couple of weeks, just get a flavor, meet people, don't get accustomed to the procedures and everything else, the soft skills, and then and some of the tools, and see what you're doing, and then you send them to training. So then now they said, oh, now I understand how this is done. Okay, but small or all are responsible for conducting an orientation. Just don't give them a manual. A lot of students I've talked to, I said, how was your orientation? Give me a manual. I sat there for all 2 days, all by myself, looking at these boring. What kind of training? Is the person falling asleep? Is it over? You could have all the cameras that look like that, but their mind is zoned out. They're someplace else. Have a training that's interactive with people talking to them. Have a little training, walk out, take them someplace else, do some on hands. Not all one thing in front of you. You're not going to do that. I understand that we're going to talk about virtual or e-learning, but even e-learning has a different types of parts to it. If you got to train to have them go through a virtual office, walk around, and or do something. Okay, formal orientation conducted. Usually, if you have a medium, larger organization, or you had the privilege, somebody that's a good trainer for bringing the people in. If it's a small business, you're the owner, then you should be the one coming in here. Let me introduce you to everyone else, because then people say, "No, here's the owner. He or she hired her," or introduce you to whoever he or she will be working with, even if it may not be a supervisor, but you're going to team them up. You got a small bill, a company you're operating, maybe 10, 15, or maybe even 2 or 3. And same thing with a supervisor. It depends what you're doing. If you got 20, 30, you bring them around, but always keep an eye on the individual so they can come back to you. And, convey the information and the specification, basically what you're looking for so they get a good review. Because, they're kind of nervous. Hey, I may have the skills, but will he or she think I'm doing right? And I usually say, look, you can make some mistakes. I'll help you out. I'll come in and ask you, be honest with me. I know we all go through this, and here's somebody else you could come to, a mentor that's not an evaluator, so the person may feel a little bit more at ease. Benefits or of training. If I look at the benefits of training, I basically there's several benefits. One is communicates basically job-related information. Employees can become productive sooner because they know the rules. Here's the boundaries. Encourages employers to develop a positive attitude, because I'm taking some time in on this, and can strengthen positive work relationships. Oh, that popped up. Okay, so, encouraging employees positive attitudes and strengthen positive work relationship, because you're introducing him or her to the other team members. And it's better off when you coming in there, because you say, hey, we're just graduated from college, or you came from someplace else. And, as a supervisor, always give him the good things. Just say, oh, he's a brand new employee. Doesn't have a darn thing. He's green like green. Give him some qualities so that people have some respect, and it builds him or her up. Why did you hire him? Okay, he may be green or she may be green, but I hired him. He's really good on computers or some other kind of skills that could bring the team in, so they will have something to talk about with this individual. So they're not like on a date that somebody fixed you up with and have no clue about the other individual. I try to always show a relationship because that's basically what managers are. Supervisor is relationship. How do I keep harmony, encourage, mentor people, coach people, yell at people, for lack of a better, in a productive way, in a professional way. Tell them, hey, you messed up, go forward. Okay, so you tell them, okay, some orientation methods, employee handbook. Even if you're a small company, there's a lot of handbooks out there, and utilize it. They give you a basic handbook. Here's the procedure, disciplinary procedure. Here's the safety issues. Here's your call. So this way, if you have any kind of issues with the employee and he or she is taking some legal action against you, and sometimes they may, who knows, you never know with people, you know what I mean? So this way you can take in a handbook. Or if you're firing or terminating, and he said, you terminated me because of this, even though it's a small business, it's kind of hard to get you for discrimination. You only have 2 employees. What are you going to do? You're just going to do who's going to do the job or meet your needs, or as a family. A little different when you start going over 50, or some municipalities, what they consider a business underneath the rules and regulations. Usually a small mom and pop it's more family oriented. Tour the facilities, involvement of coworkers, and follow up. Okay, now what's the training cycle? Now let me just go here. There's a thing. The training cycle. First of all, new employee. You've had other employees, and a lot of times a good feedback is when the employee finishes the training and it goes to the job. 3 months later, what you learned in the training. Did you apply any of this in your application? And if they say no, I was more confused. It was the next guy, I want to say my desk mate or my cubicle mate was the one who helped me out. Then I got an issue. Then you find out where were you weak at, and you work on it. You set objectives for the training. So you tell them, here's the objectives. You should be able to turn on a computer, not the Xerox machine. You should be able to do these functionalities at this level. Remember, don't bring them down too low. A lot of individuals you may be hiring already at college, or even at a junior college or a bachelor, or you have some experience. Some might be regular green, but they still have very logical. A lot of employees have a good sense on them. The different caliber of students or employees coming in. They're younger. They have, sometimes their attitude may be a little bit different, but they are good hard workers. So remember, you have to just find the different motivating factors, especially if you're a baby boomer. The same thing I have to do as an instructor. Okay, we'll decide who will participate in the training, choose the training methods. Just because he's a good person doing it, could he or she convey the information? You could have all the information knowledge, but you don't know how to transfer the information, be patient, and how to break it down to small parts. That person will have trouble. I had a graduate engineer was training a non-graduate engineer, for the cookie cutter things, and he says, "Hey, this guy's a loser. He can't do nothing, everything else." I said, "Did you try?" Because he was training him just like he was coming out of Purdue, where they already had the background as you learned in college. A little different. These people still know the information. They may not have the calculus, but they know the basic math, everything else. So they're not that level to come up with all the stress points. But a cookie cutter, so you could explain, here's how you convert the feet, and here's how you do it. So remember, so that didn't work. So I took another individual from another still a graduate, and he understood that, and he trained the individual. He's a good person. The person is very productive. So remember, just because he or she is a good in their field does not necessarily mean they're a good trainer, because they got to take that information and transfer it to the other person. A lot of people have a lot of degrees, but I can't transfer it, or how do I communicate it to a person who doesn't have a clue what you're talking about? Hopefully my workshops or this YouTube or this video clarify some of that, okay? And then so now you conduct a training, then you evaluate the training, and you start the process all over again, okay? And that's basically what all this parts were. Just to move along in here. Okay, now different various training methods. Now in Figure 4, I'm just going to use different ones the company use. They use instructor-led. Instructor-led is pretty good because people can answer the question. Even you could be instructor-led if you're at least you have distance learning, or you have meeting.com, where everyone could see the instructor and everyone could see each other, where you have virtual little people all over on the screen. If they're comfortable with the technology, excellent way to do it, because you can still talk to them and they get real live. Some people aren't that comfortable with the technology. Even younger individuals, they know how to use their smartphone, they know how to Twitter, and they know other things, but they may not know the software that's or application you're utilizing at the workforce. Nothing doesn't mean they can't learn, remember, but they may not know it, and their computers may not be mixed, and browsers, a lot of issue. So a lot of times the face-to-face on you one is work, but make sure it's very effective. Here's what they're learning. You give them the stuff with the objectives ahead of time. You say they have to read the book. They should be doing a lot of homework there. You're going through the conception, not going step. Here's how you turn on the computer, unless it's a task-oriented. But a lot of times they already will have some information, and now you're bringing them ahead. So that's 42%. The other is blended learning. That means like you're doing here. You're hearing me one way. Pretty soon you're going to have a two-way conversation in the new Blackboard going forward. So it'll be like a classroom. We'll be synchronized, and we can still do that, but it takes away from the flexibility, because you may be available at 2 and I'm at 1 in the morning and you in the noon. So this way, as long as you make it within the 24-hour period, we can still communicate and do something. But we can send each other some a quick YouTube, your presentations down the road. I'd like to do a YouTube where everyone does a PowerPoint, but I'm still thinking about that now. I just have to make sure I have enough time within the the class or the workshop. But that's a blended one. Blended ones you always do it. They record and everything else. And then computer-based online methods. They could be from either McGraw-Hill or Parsons or Centris. There's other publishers that also are working very heavy with training individuals. They pick that up from the college and they could transfer that vice versa both ways. And then webcasts. And webcasts are okay. You got to come in there. It's just kind of like a webcast for lack of better words. But it's more to forms. It's a little more structured than a webcast would be like for maybe a 24-hour or one or two times or a virtual classroom. So this is basically 11%. But those numbers are going higher because you guys are keeping taking more classes with me. Okay, and the social network devices. Okay, so that basically it's assessment of training needs. Again, identify the training needs. If your performance is going down, you need a training. If it could be team, it could be soft skills, it could be task oriented. You try to get somebody that's already real good in that, and he or she may not be a good communicator, but you bring the instructor and they'll work together. The instructor can communicate. A lot of times I'll work with IT, and IT has their own jargon for lack of better words, and they're looking at a different way of looking at it, and most individuals get intimidated with sometimes with IT, and they don't know how to communicate. I will just say this and talk back to them, and I could put in the everyday jargon working back. That's what I used to do in sales with engineers. They were up here, and how do you convey it to a person who has no clue about engineering or electricity when I worked for ComEd? So there's another way. It's a person who could convey a harder concept into an everyday language by utilizing either some kind of pictures or something else that will describe that in a different way. And this way the engineer and the other person there, now he or she knows how to communicate. The one thing when you're communicating with somebody that knows your discipline, another thing with somebody who's learning your discipline, you have to start from scratch. As an instructor or a supervisor, you may jump 2 or 3 steps. Remember, they're looking, how the heck did he get there? And you got to go back here. You did step 2, but since you did it so much, you just combine it, and your mind does it, and you're already in step 4. But that's where practice and training helps. How do you make sure those steps are there? Suggest needs for training, evaluate areas for change. Sometimes you change a process, what new knowledge and skills we need in the future. Also, when you're doing the resistance, you're already prepared. Ask employees, consider needs during the training, mandatory training, union rules. A lot of times what OSHA tells me I have to have so much CPR training. They have to know how to bring somebody else, rescue someone in case they're in a vault or on a transmission line with high voltage. The fire department will not go up there, but they'll take them once we bring them down because everything else is still energized. The risk is too high, so it has to be another construction individual. It's the same thing when someone's in a manhole or something else. Those are the skilled individuals that may have the CPR. They may come afterwards, but you still need that workforce because they're not trained. They're trained to take an individual out, but they're not trained to go into certain confined areas that could have a danger all by itself. Okay? And then, learning environment, you look into learning environment, foster climate values, share information, set good examples. You got to have that right attitude with the trainer. Types of training, on-the-job training, apprenticeship. Cross-training is a good one. So if you have someone that's on vacation, you don't have 2 individuals. He or she could take each other's spot. The only thing is you got to make sure when one's gone, the other one has to be there. You can even do a third. When you cross-train someone one and then they don't want to do it and you've already cross-trained them, you say, you have to for the next year to cross-train somebody else because I spent that time. You're working for me, you wanted to. I pay the additional cost for that. And for this 1 year till I get another person to replace you, you will do that, whether it's voluntary or I say you're trained, you have to take that position. All right, vestibule training is basically go someplace else and simulate the job. Interactive multimedia, we talked about like this is a little bit. You do the Connect, or you do some of other publishers' interactive software, or some of the assessments I make you do within my workshops or in some of my classes face-to-face or online. Role-playing. Role-playing is pretty good. I do role-playing. But most people, when they take the other role, they're real nice. So I always play the negative role, and I yell at them, scream at them sometimes. And like an employee would, and they go, that's why you have to face it. You always got to keep calm. And sometimes I may have another instructor think I lost control of the classroom, and they'll come in. But, I'm not screaming at them. my voice carries anyway. But I try to give them that feeling. Here's how you're going to look, in your face, not spinning in your face. Not like they do in the military where you have to take it. But just so they understand. I ask them the questions, and how do you respond back to them? Don't tell me I got a poor attitude. What do you mean poor attitude? Like, what the heck is a poor attitude? I got a good attitude. And you're going to say, just right there. See, instead of being calmer, showing emotion, saying, yes, okay, yeah, you have a good point. Maybe I am sometimes a little bit edgy, or sometimes I may be come across a little abrasive. You'll say, yeah, what do you mean I'm abrasive? Okay, so remember you have to give them examples, and that's where the training and basic training skills comes in. Okay, the other one is part of training as a supervisor. You're a coach. By definition, guidance, instructions in how to do the job so that it satisfies performance. I'll show them here's how I do it, and know that everyone's different. I teach math once in a while, and remember, you could do math by fractions, by percent, whatever you feel comfortable. So sometimes I'll do it, but I have students come up and show them how they do it, and they set up their problems. Look, here's a different way. But I always go back to how the author showed it, because that's basically your Bible, for lack of better words, or your procedure. This is it. Even though I could do it different ways, I said, but if you fall back and you're not sure, you go back to the procedure, you follow step. That's how I learn a new skill. So I always try to utilize, even though I may do it differently, this is the book they're using. This is the book that they're going to use the resources. As a supervisor, if here's the manual, you give them, and there's a correction, you give them another manual, change it, or here's the manual, and you work with the manual from that perspective. Remember, the supervisor, you have to put yourself, or as an instructor, when you're doing the training coach, you got to put yourself empathy in the position of the individual, so he or she understands that. That's how you transfer knowledge in their terms, not how I understand it, in different levels. If they've already been there a while, I don't go from the basic, I just pick up from here, because they already understand the basic. Coaching duties is, observe, you teach, and you encourage. Coaching process figure, you observe your employees meeting expectation, praise them, that's good, intrinsic. Just don't praise them because, I'm saying, hey, you did a great job. And if they're doing a poor job, if this is what he thinks is great, fine. You're reinforcing the wrong behavior, even though it's so far. You say, not bad. Pretty soon you get the hang of it, but you're getting there. You're almost there. And that's why. And once they get it, hey, you really made it. You went faster than most people that went through this training process. Or, okay, that's okay. If you have a little problem, look, I'm a dyslexic. It takes me a little while to catch on, but once you catch on, you'll be fine. Don't worry. It just takes you a little bit longer. But if it's down too long, then you have to look at it. Maybe you should adjust your training for a certain class of individual or certain people coming in. If it's English, because you have a lot of people who are coming in, maybe English is second language, so you'll adjust so the trainer, is bilingual, or he or she brings it down in the terminology and understand it. Because one thing is, especially if it's a safety issue, you want to train them and they don't fully understand the consequences or why they're doing something, then you're going to have problems down the road. And it falls back in the training or for the trainer, in most cases also the supervisor. Just because it comes back training, you have to make sure they know and reinforce that training. So you should be in the training to see what they learn and how do I reinforce it. And decide an employee how to correct the problem. Real quick and easy. Okay? So I'll just turn that down. Right, so now what do we have? So I've got the mentor. We got that already, right? Close that. Okay, evaluation of training. One thing you got to do is you evaluate the trainer. A lot of times as a supervisor, I come in there, like they come and sit on my classes, or they video me on live, on YouTube or in some of these school videos that I teach on. And basically, as I prepared, how do I come across? I sit in there, I feel supervised, just have the individuals read the safety manual. Some people, English second language, had trouble reading, they felt embarrassed. Other people are giggling, other people are snoring. That's not training, that's just that's torture, my goodness sake. I could get it for a hostile environment if I would look at that. Training is talking to them. Talk a little bit example. Hey, tell me in your own words what the heck that meant. Here's how this means. Show them, walk them around. Here's what a knot looks like. Here's what the picture. Show a little video. Do the different things. Communicate that information clearly in an interesting way. You can joke around, not too many jokes. When it's serious. Training includes visual demonstration in addition to verbal and descriptions to do a task. The next thing you have to look at when I'm looking at training is well enough prepared for a training program. Does he understand how they would benefit from a training program and have a chance to ask questions, receive plenty of praise, for their progress and employees. Okay, so when I'm looking at this basically is the whole training system. Let's see what happened here. So when you finish evaluating that, the next thing you should do is evaluate the employee. How well enough prepared for the training program. A lot of times you have to encourage them and give them something so they could train. A lot of times when you're doing construction, and not this time when I was learning how to repair power lines a while back, when it was one of my many jobs that I did as going through school, and I used to achieve the education to still pay for the schooling and everything else. But what you'd really look at for the training, I mean, if you're in the job, they'll tell you how to do it. You know, if you're following someone, they'll show you, here, you draw this. Or when I went into sales and marketing, I was following someone, and after he or she did a couple of presentations, they would say, hey, George, you go up there. He's still behind there, but they let me go up there and kind of stumbled through it. People didn't know. I was a little nervous. Yeah, I tried to pretend like I knew what I was doing because I listened. And that's how you learn. You know what I mean? So you're doing. And then when I finally went into the training for the marketing or for the account manager, there you know, with the schooling and everything else, or they had the bachelor's at that time, going for my master's. Now with the schooling and everything else, it started meshed. I felt comfortable. I knew the information. I knew how to talk in front of people. And then now look at me now. I'm going live to you, virtual, on a YouTube or some kind of video. But you see, if you look at some of my earlier clips, I was really stiff like this. Hello, my name is George. I'm more relaxed. You know what I mean? Because I know you see me as I am if I be talking to students. But you have to learn. That's just taking it. The more you do it, when you look at some of your older things when you first started, my God, how did I do that? And now you look at it, you're smooth, you're professional, for lack of a better word. So remember, the supervisor, your first job is usually your hardest. You make a lot of mistakes, you mess up. It's no different than when you have kids. The first kids, I read the books and everything else. The second kid, okay, a little bit. The third kid, the pacifier fellow that's clean up, he won't die. We'll take care of for the bacteria. We'll straighten up the immune system. I'm just kidding. But when you look at that, you see me. So when you do it, so you make the mistakes. But when you get to the next position, what did I do wrong? How did I approach information? Always do after something, an event happens, did I do it the right way? Should I did it differently? No different with the employees. How did he or she do it? What could I change? And now you do the training. How do I adjust that? And then how do I mentor it? Or what do I do when I bring new employees in? You know, which method works? You know, it's not one method works for all. Those of you who have taught or are supervisors, each individual is different. And because their uniqueness, they have a common thread that I try to find with the training, but some uniqueness, some tweaking has to be with the trainer. Some things I did in one class works well, other things that didn't come across as well, so you have to do adjustment. And that happens with human nature, and that's good. That makes life interesting. Okay, so we did today on supervision, on training and orientation. That's one thing, mentoring, coaching, training. I think that's about, like, for a first-line supervisor, maybe 30-40% of your work is training. So it was a little bit longer series, but it's something you should be sure. Prepare, look at it, make sure you execute. If it doesn't work, change it. Sit in another instructor or sit another person, see how he or she does it. In class, you see another student does a presentation in a class. Man, I wish I would have done that. Think about it, learn it, and now you can incorporate it. Before you know it, it's going to be it's still going to get a little nervous, but you're going to be better and better as you perform the tasks. Okay? And as a supervisor, learn just because you know it. Other people may have to tweak it, but try to find out about them. But the whole thing is, of a good supervisor, how I transfer that knowledge over. Okay, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and I'll see you in our next week. Thank you.